The year is 1976. American television is an exclusive boys' club. The evening news desk is seen as the final fortress, a sacred place that no woman could ever touch. And then she appeared, Barbara Walters. With a shocking $1 million contract, she kicked down the door of that club. And for that, she was publicly humiliated by her own co-anchor every single day on national television. Her 4 marriages all ended in heartbreak. Her only beloved daughter ran away from home, sinking into addiction, lost and alone. Today, we're not going to talk about what you already know. We're going to talk about what she tried to hide. Welcome to the real story of Barbara Walters. Barbara Jill Walters was born on September 25, 1929, in Boston, Massachusetts, to a Jewish family with roots in the Russian Empire. She was the daughter of Lou Walters, a legendary figure in American entertainment. Lou wasn't just a booking agent, he was an impresario, the man who created and managed one of the country's most famous nightclub chains, the Latin Quarter. He was also a producer of the Ziegfeld Follies on Broadway. Barbara's childhood was enveloped in that glamorous world. She grew up among dancers, comedians, and stars. Their homes in New York and Miami were always filled with famous people. She lived in luxurious penthouse apartments, wore expensive clothes, and was accustomed to an upper-class life. However, beneath that wealthy facade was an insecure reality. The entertainment industry is a brutal and risky business. Lou Walters' career was like a roller coaster. One moment he was making a fortune, the next he could lose everything. The Walters family could be on top of the world one year and facing bankruptcy the next. This very volatility instilled a persistent fear in young Barbara's mind. She learned early on that money and fame could vanish overnight. This forged one of the greatest driving forces of her life, a desperate need for financial independence. She vowed to herself that she would never depend on a man or the whims of fate. She had to earn her own money, to create her own security. Her childhood suffering was deepened by the tragedy of her older sister, Jacqueline. Jacqueline was born with a developmental disability, which caused difficulties in both cognition and communication. Barbara both loved and felt a profound responsibility to protect her vulnerable sister. She often felt ashamed when friends teased Jacqueline, and that guilt followed her for her entire life. She always felt she had to be successful, to be strong enough to make up for her sister's portion of life. Caring for Jacqueline taught Barbara a deep empathy for the vulnerable and for those who carry unspoken pain. These two factors, her father's financial instability and her sister's tragedy, became the furnace that forged a Barbara Walters who was ambitious yet sensitive, tough yet vulnerable. After graduating from the prestigious Sarah Lawrence College with a degree in English literature in 1951, Barbara entered the world with a complex set of tools, a familiarity with the world of celebrity, a fear of instability, and a steely determination to build a stable life for herself. Barbara Walters' career was no walk in the park. It was an unforgiving battle against gender stereotypes, where every step forward was paid for with sweat, tears, and even humiliation. After a few years in public relations and writing, Barbara joined NBC in 1961 as a writer and researcher for the famous morning program, The Today Show. Initially, her job was strictly behind the scenes. Later, she was given an on-camera position, but it was as a Today Girl, a derogatory term for beautiful women tasked with light news segments on fashion, cooking, or interviewing pageant winners. It was not real journalism, but Barbara refused to accept her place. She fought quietly but fiercely. She sought out and pitched deeper stories on her own. She worked 2-3 times as hard as her male colleagues. She proved she was not just a pretty girl, but an intelligent and sharp journalist. Gradually, she was given more important assignments, more challenging interviews. By 1974, after 13 years of relentless work, she broke all precedent to officially become the first female co-host of The Today Show. In 1976, Barbara Walters made history. She left NBC to join its rival, ABC, with a record-breaking contract, $1 million a year to become the first female co-anchor of a national evening newscast, the ABC Evening News. It was a seismic milestone, but it also opened the most painful and humiliating chapter of her career. First, the $1 million salary, equivalent to over $5 million today, made her a target. The public and the media criticized her as a money grubber who was tarnishing the purity of journalism. Second, and worst of all, was the cruel treatment from her own co-anchor, Harry Reasoner. Reasoner was a veteran journalist of the old guard who could not accept sharing the news desk with a woman, especially one who came from a morning show he considered less serious. Reasoner's contempt was not hidden. It happened on live television, in front of millions of viewers. He was often cold, interrupted her, and in one broadcast he could be seen visibly checking a stopwatch to time how long Barbara had been speaking. In the 2 years they worked together, he spoke only a few short sentences to her off-air. It was a public execution. Barbara later recalled that she felt like she was drowning every day. She cried in her dressing room, suffered sleepless nights, and her confidence was completely shattered. She considered quitting. This tragedy was not an act. It was real pain, a deep psychological scar she would carry. Ultimately, the show failed in the ratings and Reasoner left. Barbara stayed, but her reputation was severely damaged. Many thought her career was over, but they were wrong. From the ashes of this failure, a queen was reborn, stronger than ever. Instead of collapsing, Barbara turned the tragedy at the ABC Evening News into a launchpad. She understood she had to create her own arena, a place where she had control and could showcase her full talent. ABC gave her a new opportunity to produce her own specials titled The Barbara Walters Specials. This is where she completely redefined the art of the television interview. She didn't just ask questions about policy or events. She delved into the psyche, the lives, the fears, and the most secret aspirations of her guests. She became famous for making powerful figures and seemingly untouchable stars break down in tears. Her classic question, "If you were a tree, what kind of tree would you be?" Зрение, хотя иногда насмехались, был блестящим психологическим инструментом для разрушения защитных механизмов предмета. At the same time, she became one of the two pillars of the news magazine show 2020, where she would remain for 25 years, conducting hundreds of memorable interviews. Barbara Walters had an extraordinary ability to get access to anyone, from world leaders to the most controversial figures. Fidel Castro, 1977. She spent days in Cuba, riding with Castro on patrol boats and entering his mountain hideout to conduct a groundbreaking exclusive interview, showing the world an unprecedented view of the Cuban leader. Anwar Sadat and Menachem Begin, 1977. She conducted the very first joint interview between the Egyptian president and the Israeli prime minister, a major diplomatic breakthrough that contributed to the later Camp David Accords. Vladimir Putin, 2001. She looked the Russian president straight in the eye and asked a chilling question. "People say you are a cold man. Have you ever ordered anyone killed? Are you a murderer?" Putin was stunned by the directness of the question. Margaret Thatcher. The interview between two iron ladies, one of politics, one of television, was a tense and captivating battle of wits. Michael Jackson, 1997. She had a deep, intimate interview at Neverland, where Michael Jackson spoke for the first time about his stolen childhood and his pain, revealing a vulnerable side of the king of pop. Monica Lewinsky, 1999. This was the pinnacle of her interviewing career. After months of silence at the center of the scandal with President Bill Clinton, Monica Lewinsky chose Barbara Walters to tell her story. The interview drew an astronomical number, 74 million viewers, becoming the most-watched news interview in American television history. She asked the question the entire country wanted to know. What will you tell your children one day? These interviews weren't just conversations. They were cultural events, moments where tens of millions of people held their breath. Barbara proved that an interview could be both sharp journalism and profound psychological drama. In stark contrast to her powerful and tightly controlled career, Barbara Walters' personal life was a series of searches, heartbreaks, and silent tragedies. Barbara Walters was married 4 times to 3 men. Robert Henry Katz, 1955 to 1957, a business executive. The marriage was brief and later annulled. Lee Goober, 1963 to 1976, a theater producer and owner. This was her longest marriage, and he was the adoptive father of her daughter, Jacqueline. Merv Adelson, 1981 to 1984, in 1986 to 1992. The CEO of Lorimar Television. They married, divorced, remarried, and divorced again. Their relationship was tumultuous. Beyond her marriages and her autobiography audition, she revealed a bombshell secret. She had a years-long affair in the 1970s with Senator Edward Brooke, a married black man. This relationship, if exposed at the time, could have destroyed both of their careers. It showed a Barbara who was drawn to powerful, intelligent, and complex men. But it also revealed her loneliness and deep desire for connection. Barbara Walters' greatest pain and most private tragedy revolved around her only child, her daughter Jacqueline Dina Goober. After marrying Lee Goober, Barbara struggled to conceive. She suffered 3 miscarriages, a terrible physical and emotional pain she kept hidden for years. Finally, she and Lee decided to adopt. They adopted a baby girl and named her Jacqueline, after Barbara's late sister. However, their mother-daughter relationship was incredibly turbulent. Jacqueline grew up in the enormous shadow of her famous mother. She felt pressured, neglected because of her mother's work, and rebelled. As a teenager, Jacqueline became a troubled teen. She ran away from home, got involved with drugs, and lived a wild lifestyle. Barbara once recounted in a tearful interview that her daughter disappeared for a month. She had to hire a private investigator to find her. They finally located Jacqueline, and Barbara had to send her to a special school in Idaho to help her get clean and find herself. This was Barbara's greatest tragedy. The woman who could interview anyone in the world, who could make dictators confess, was powerless to communicate with and heal her own daughter. She always carried a sense of guilt, believing her career had stolen her daughter's childhood. Fortunately, Jacqueline later overcame her difficult period and rebuilt her life. Their relationship was also gradually repaired. Barbara Walters wasn't just a journalist. She was a savvy businesswoman and investor. In 1997, when many thought she would soon retire, Barbara reinvented herself yet again. She created, co-owned, and co-hosted The View. It was a brilliant and groundbreaking idea, a daily talk show with a panel of women from different generations and with different viewpoints debating the hot topics of the day. The View became a cultural phenomenon, a television empire that brought Barbara not only more fame, but also a massive fortune. She wasn't just the host, she was the boss. The fear of poverty from her childhood drove Barbara to work relentlessly and accumulate wealth. At the time of her death, her net worth was estimated to be $170 million. Her real estate portfolio included the Fifth Avenue apartment, New York City, her home for 30 years, located at 944 Fifth Avenue on the prestigious Upper East Side. Designed in a classic Italian Renaissance style by renowned architect Nathan Korn in 1925. It featured stunning views of Central Park, high ceilings and lavish interiors, oak paneling, antique mirrors, stone fireplaces, leopard print carpets, glossy red walls, a private library, and an old Hollywood-style dining room. The apartment was valued at approximately $19.7 million. The Park Avenue apartment, New York. A 4-bedroom unit currently listed for $10.4 million or for rent at $37,000 a month. Luxuriously designed with high vaulted ceilings, dark wood, a wood-paneled library, an elegant dining room, a master bedroom overlooking Park Avenue, and a kitchen with 2 sub-zero refrigerators and a 750-bottle wine cellar. It even included staff quarters, a nod to the old-world luxury of New York's elite. Her car collection included a Mercedes-Benz S-Class and a Lincoln Aviator SUV, reflecting her status and taste for sophisticated comfort. The legacy of Barbara Walters is immeasurable, a pioneer who broke the glass ceiling. She paved the way for a generation of talented female journalists like Diane Sawyer, Katie Couric, and Oprah Winfrey. She proved that women could absolutely lead the most important news programs and interview the most powerful people. The architect of the modern interview, she transformed interviews from simple information gathering into deep psychological dialogues that touch the hearts of both her guests and her audience. A brilliant creator and entrepreneur. With The View, she created a new television format, a massive commercial and cultural legacy, an icon of resilience. Her story is a lesson in rising from failure, turning humiliation into motivation, and never letting anyone else define your worth. Barbara Walters was not just a journalist, she was a phenomenon, a woman who turned her scars into strength and her humiliation into drive. Her life is a powerful lesson. Behind every triumph, there are sacrifices. Behind every winning smile, there are silent tears. She fought not just to succeed, but to survive. Her legacy is not only the historic interviews, but the path she blazed for millions of other women, a path built with blood, sweat, tears, and an indomitable will. What do you think about the dramatic life of Barbara Walters? Is success worth such a high price? Share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to join us as we explore the fascinating stories behind great people. Goodbye, and see you next time.